When I was a child, I often overheard my grandfather telling stories to the other adults. Stories about ghosts and other strange things that he couldn't explain. It was these stories that sparked my interest in the paranormal. Ever since then, I've read and watched every book and documentary on ghosts and unsolved mysteries that I could get my hands on. I like to think I'm fairly knowledgeable on the topic, but as much as I know, or at least think I know, there's still things that take me by surprise. After all, the world is full of strange stories of anomalies and unsolved paranormal mysteries. Some have logical, scientific explanations, while others just defy logic and all laws of science. So put the kettle on, sit back, and relax as we share and examine some local stories from right here in the Maritimes, as well as stories from around the world. Stories of the paranormal, the unexplained, and the just plain weird. I'm Raven, and welcome to Maritime Paranormal Chat. Welcome to another episode of Maritime Paranormal Chat. I'm Raven, and once again, we're creeping it real, podcasting from beautiful Prince Edward Island, Canada. And don't forget, if you have a paranormal, unexplained, creepy, or just plain weird story or experience that you'd like to share, or if there's something you'd like to hear covered on this podcast series, please feel free to message me on my Maritime Paranormal Chat PEI Facebook group page. As always, keep in mind that your real name will not be used unless you specifically say that it's okay to do so. We have a lot to cover on today's episode, as today we're going to be talking about Bigfoot. More specifically, get this, alleged Bigfoot sightings in the Maritimes. Yes, you heard that correctly. Alleged Bigfoot sightings in the Maritime provinces. But first, there's some events coming up right here in the Maritimes in the next couple of months that you may or may not have heard about, and they're definitely worthy of mentioning. This coming September 30th, there's going to be a ghost hunt and sleepover at the West Point Lighthouse right here in Prince Edward Island, and that's located in O'Leary. And just reading off the site, it says, "Join Haunted Rooms America for a chilling night at the West Point Lighthouse. Do you have the courage for a lone vigil in the historic lighthouse tower, where the apparition of Lighthouse Willie has been seen and mysterious voices have been heard? For more information on that event, you can email them at wesley@hauntedrooms.com or give them a call at 902-859-3605. And I'll post all this information on Maritime Paranormal Chat PEI Facebook group page as well. And guys, it looks like it's that time of the year again. The annual Shag Harbor UFO Expo is coming up in Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia. And this year it's going to be held from September 30th to October 1st. And keep in mind, this is 2023. I have to say that because when you hear this episode, it will be pre-recorded. So keep that in mind. September 30th, 2023 to October 1st, 2023 at the Rod Grand Hotel, and that's in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. And if you don't know where Shag Harbor is, it's actually located on the southern tip of the province. And for anyone who doesn't know the significance of Shag Harbor and its relevance to this podcast series, Shag Harbor was the location where a UFO actually crashed into the harbor in 1967 and sat on top of the water for approximately 45 minutes in front of a dozen witnesses before going under. So to commemorate the yearly anniversary of this event, Shag Harbor holds the annual UFO Expo, which brings UFO experts and eyewitnesses together to share their observations and the latest theories and research about unidentified flying objects. If you want more information on this event, you can check out their website at shagharborUFOexpo.com, or you can give them a call at 902-319-0649, or you can email them at shagharbor1967@gmail.com. And again, I'll post this contact information on Maritime Paranormal Chat PEI Facebook group page. Here's something new. The Canadian Association of Parapsychological Research and Investigation is proud to announce the first inaugural Halifax Paranormal Symposium. And that's going to be held this year on Saturday, October 7th, 2023 at the Halifax Tower Hotel and Conference Center from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. in what they hope is going to be a recurring annual event. Now, guest speakers will be sharing their exciting and promising original case files, case studies, and/or personal experiences, which could include parapsychology, mind-matter interaction, survival of consciousness after death, hauntings, ghosts, poltergeists, unidentified flying objects, field investigation case studies, and religious parapsychology topics such as demonology. And this is going to be held at the Halifax Tower Hotel and Conference Centre. That's 15 Lakelands Boulevard, Halifax, Nova Scotia. And again, that's taking place October 7th, 2023 from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. Tickets are on sale now at ppri.net/tickets. Again, I'll post all the necessary links on Maritime Paranormal Chat PEI Facebook group page. Having said all that, don't go away, because when we come back, we're going to be discussing alleged Bigfoot sightings in the Maritimes as Maritime Paranormal Chat continues. If you are looking for a truly creepy documentary, I highly recommend watching or reading the book Hunt for the Skinwalker, both book and DVD available now at Amazon.ca and Amazon.com. For more than 50 years, the bizarre events at this remote Utah ranch have ranged from the perplexing to the wholly terrifying. Vanishing and mutilated cattle, unidentified flying objects, poltergeist activity, the appearance of huge otherworldly creatures. We'll get more in depth with this topic in a later episode, but for now, here's the trailer, and don't forget to check it out with video on YouTube.
The global public is not ready to have global confirmation of this. A lot of disturbing things will occur. It's just too powerful.
Skinwalker Ranch. This is like the Area 51 of the paranormal.
It was not a single phenomenon. There were a host of things that happened.
Have there been experiences there that have shaken the Pentagon and CIA and other agencies? Absolutely.
Nobody knows what we're dealing with. That's the bottom line. Nobody knows.
This is 30 or 40 hours of material that the public has never seen before.
They saw this humanoid creature crawling through this tunnel, hovering 4 feet above the ground.
Something forced 4 2,000-pound bulls to cram themselves into this trailer without opening this door. It's completely impossible.
I've seen things that I can't explain.
This was one of the most surprising things that we recorded right after I purchased the ranch.
Is it real?
Oh, yes, I believe it is.
Something is here.
These are real, tangible, physical events. This is game-changing.
It's one thing to be reading about UFOs or other realities or interdimensionals. It's another thing to be staring at it right in the face.
We're back with Maritime Paranormal Chat, where we discuss the paranormal, the unexplained, the creepy, and the just plain weird. I'm Raven, and recently I found a website called the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, and in it, much to my surprise, as I'm sure it'll be to you as well, it actually lists a handful of alleged Bigfoot sightings/experiences that allegedly happened in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. And I say sightings and experiences because some of these sightings, quote unquote, aren't actually sightings or encounters, but just things that people have experienced there. And you'll see what I mean whenever we get there. Now, to examine these incidents, I have with me today two people who I've personally known all my life, and they absolutely love the paranormal just as much as I do. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your guys' input on tonight's content. We'll refer to them as Flatty and Igor. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks, John. Hey, how you doing?
Now, we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's just get right to it. First off, do you guys believe in Bigfoot?
To be honest with you, yeah, I do. You know, why not?
I do too, but there's a lot of questions.
What kind of questions?
Well, for instance, you talked about Bigfoot sightings in the Maritimes. Is that actual sightings, or is that a bunch of people jumping on the Bigfoot bandwagon? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, how do you know what's real? Like, it's great that you hear about it. Like, there's millions of sightings out west. There's tons of them through the central to western part of the U.S. and Canada. But all of a sudden, in the last 20 years, they're starting to pop up in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Like, is this bullshit, or is it somebody just trying to hone in on Bigfoot fame? I guess that's the question I'm asking.
Well, those are all good questions and good points, and we'll get into all that in just a couple of minutes. But first, I just want to say Damien couldn't join us today because apparently he's gone on a 5-day mini cruise at the last minute. So our regards to him, and we hope that he's having the time of his life. So before we begin, for anybody who actually isn't familiar with the whole Bigfoot phenomena, just a little background on Bigfoot, or as he's commonly referred to as Sasquatch, and you guys can feel free to comment on anything that I say here if you have anything you want to add to this. It's believed to be an alleged giant ape-like creature. This is actually coming from a website. It's probably the best overview of Bigfoot that I could find. It's from livescience.com. So anyway, they say Bigfoot, or as it's commonly referred to as Sasquatch, is an alleged giant ape-like creature. It's a cryptid, or species rumored to exist, and just like the Chupacabra or Loch Ness Monster, there's next to no physical evidence to suggest Bigfoot is actually real or not. But that doesn't stop the alleged sightings of the creature, and even with the prevalence of today's high-tech cameras on cell phones, as everybody who's ever researched Bigfoot would know, that it seems that no one can capture any definitive, undisputable photo or video evidence to support its existence. What do you guys think about that?
Well, there is all kinds of video. It's just how do you prove if it's real or not? You know, like a lot of it is, you know, at a distance, at a far distance, or you know, bad lighting.
Exactly. There's nothing close up. You always see these people taking videos like they're 200 or 300 feet away, or they're 50, 60 feet away. It's never close.
Yeah,
and you can't tell.
Why do you think that nobody can get any definitive, undisputable evidence?
You want my honest opinion?
Sure.
I think 80% of the sightings are bullshit.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Seriously, I think a lot of people try to jump on the bandwagon.
Sure.
Like, I don't doubt that he's out there. I don't doubt that he exists.
So you're saying 20% of the video that we see is real, and the other 80%,
or any kind of sightings, whether it's video or whatever. Yeah. I would say a good 80% of them is people. Like, you guys must have seen some of those interviews and some of those TV shows. Like, Jesus, guys, come on.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't have worse acting. Anyway, that's my opinion. I do think there's a lot of it out there that, like, there's some of it out there is genuine, and I do think a lot of people actually see it. But I think a lot of it's bullshit. I think they just jumping on the bandwagon for attention, and they're trying to get, you know, to become famous.
Or it's just simple mistaken identity type of thing. It could have been a bear walking on its hind feet or something like that.
Honestly, though, like, I would say 20% of the. I don't even know if it's guys. I don't even know if it's that high. It might even be lower than that.
I would have to say that it's a lot lower than that. I mean, for my,
I would think it is. Like, I'm spitballing when I say 20. I think it's a lot lower than that. And the amount of people that have actually seen something, and then how many of those people out there are high and drunk? And then when you're high and drunk, boys, geez, you see whatever you want.
Yeah. But also you have to take into account how many people that have seen something and have never come forward to let anybody know because they're afraid that they're going to get laughed at, you know? So, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of people that do probably have videos or had sightings.
In my opinion, I'd have to say that I seriously believe that's probably about 5% of sightings that people see are actual unexplainable, undeniable Bigfoot sightings, but that unfortunately that 5% never has any video footage available or undisputable, undeniable evidence, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's my big.
And And we've painted such an image of what Bigfoot looks like that everybody, it's so simple to, well, can you describe the animal? Well, he was about 7-8 feet tall, and he was hair all over. You know, they're just describing the same thing over and over, so you really don't have to.
Well,
you know.
And when you say that, it actually reminds me of these ridiculous shows that come on TV that people like to watch, like Finding Bigfoot, I think it's called. Is that the one where they got Bobo, that Bigfoot size?
Yeah. Oh, there's 3 or 4 of them. There's Finding Bigfoot, then there's there's like it's crazy, and some of them are so out there. It's just.
Well,
I don't know.
What bothers me about that Finding Bigfoot show, if that's the one I'm thinking of, is I've only watched it a couple of times, but somebody reports a sighting somewhere and several people have seen it in this town or area. So they go and they interview the people, and they don't ask any other questions. Just, oh, well, from what you've told us, you've definitely seen a Bigfoot.
Yeah, exactly. But they're all the same.
Yeah, and then they'll hide out in the woods overnight to see if they can hear the sounds or see anything on their infrared cameras. And of course, 9 times out of 10 they do hear unexplained sounds, but I mean, what's to say the local people don't have a few drinks? They know the Finding Bigfoot research team is in town. Who's to say they're not going to go out in the middle of the woods and make some noise and you know what I mean? Like, just be arseholes about it.
Guys, this is just an example here. I just typed in Bigfoot TV shows, and this is what popped up. This is everything. This is the shit that's out there. Expedition Bigfoot. I wouldn't believe anything on that more than I believe that my wife is a tooth fairy. Finding Bigfoot. That's another one.
Right.
There's another one. Stream Expedition Bigfoot. New reality TV series exploring Sasquatch sightings coming out in 2023. See, there's no shortage of this. Bigfoot exists. Watch Bigfoot Catcher. Finding Bigfoot TV. He can have a whole station dedicated to shows for Bigfoot.
Yeah.
If you look at where's Bigfoot? Bigfoot's coming to town. Like, Jesus.
Well, I mean, look, even Harry and the Hendersons, they made a movie about him, like, so.
Well, I can remember $6 Million Man, Andre the Giant.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
But I mean, there's no shortage of news. And because of the coverage that it's gotten, it's like you said, we can easily sit there and say, yeah, I know what to say if I ever want to say I saw a Bigfoot.
So having said that, and this is interesting because we've already mentioned, okay, there's a real serious shortage of video, photo, or physical evidence. Most Bigfoot sightings occur in the Pacific Northwest, where the creature...
Yep.
And I use the term the creature because nobody knows what it is. But anyway, most sightings occur in the Northwest where the creature can be linked to indigenous myths and legends. The word Sasquatch itself is from Saskets, which is a word from the Halkami Island language. If I said that right, I hope I did. If I didn't, I apologize. I don't want to offend anybody. But that's used by some Salish First Nations people in southwestern British Columbia, which means wild man or hairy man.
Also, too, just to reiterate something while you're on that topic, that's just one indigenous culture, one indigenous tribe out west. You got to look at all the different tribes that have out west that have history dating back to this supposed Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Sasquatch.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the point I was going to make, was that these reports have been, like, just from that group alone, as early as 1884, when the first Bigfoot story was actually published of sightings in Victoria, BC, of a gorilla-type creature that was captured in the area. But, of course, there's no physical evidence that was preserved, or they don't really go into any detail other than that. But, I mean, any tribe in the Pacific Northwest has reports of encounters with Bigfoot or some similar creature or being in the woods that they've had many interactions with, mostly friendly, but there's even instances where he's not so friendly. And depending on how far you want to go into the Aboriginal folklore and whatnot, that, I mean, usually when it comes to the native people, the Aboriginal people, The only time that he's not friendly, from my understanding, is when people go in there uninvited and they start hunting, destroying stuff. They start disturbing the atmosphere in the area where the Aboriginals have always kept that peace and kept that respect for the environment. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how do you feel about that? Like, I mean, as far as evidence goes today, we don't have any, but if you look at historically speaking, he's been around basically forever.
And you might want to add to that there's apparently there's more than just the one. You know?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, they're right across the continent, really, when you think of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just not one creature. It's
well, I mean,
multiples for sure.
Yeah, and people often say, researchers believe in Aboriginal people, depending on what group of Aboriginal people you talk to. Some say they come in families, they come in different groups. Some say they're solitary beings, but who's to say? Like, really? I think it's probably just a combination of all the above.
Yeah. Yeah.
And has anybody ever heard of an author named John Green? He was a big-time Bigfoot researcher back in, I think, the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Anybody ever hear of him, John Green? I think he wrote a bunch of books, too. Anyway, he compiled a list of 1,340 sightings through the 19th and 20th centuries. So, I mean, that's just basically from word of mouth. I mean, that's long before, computers and newspapers were, newspapers were there, but I mean, like, for compiling information, basically just stories passed down, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, something has been generating these stories or being the fuel for the fire for as long as man has been around. Agreed? Like, how do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, to a degree, I believe it. But I still, the only issues I have with this whole thing is I believe in Bigfoot personally.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in it. I've never seen one, but I've seen, there's just too much folklore, too much myth, too much stuff going around from people from hundreds of years ago, like you said, that have seen things. So there's too much of that. So, like, I do believe that to some degree it exists, but why can't we find evidence? Like, why can't we come up with something solid?
See, let me read this first. What do you think about that, first off, Flatty?
Well, you have to realize that, I mean, there is so much woodland out there that has not been actually a human has not touched.
Yep. No, I agree 100%. 100%.
We're talking hundreds upon hundreds of square miles of mountainous terrain, and so I mean, it is quite possible that a creature such as Bigfoot could stay hidden for
which I believe, yes.
And if memory serves me correctly, I remember reading or hearing, maybe I watched it somewhere, but several sources I've always known or heard that there's places in the Pacific Northwest where it's uncharted. Because, like Flatty just said, hasn't been people there ever. And there's been airplanes that have gone down and have been lost that have never been found. Because it's just a vast...
Yeah, and we don't have that here in the Maritimes.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We don't have that vast area of unexploredness. We don't have... You'd be hard pressed to find an area I don't even think you'd ever find an area in the Maritimes or in the Atlantic provinces that has never been touched by a human. I think you'd be hard pressed to find that.
Well, that's a really good point. But having said that, and I think this is just worthy of noting, and again, this is from livescience.com, www.livescience.com, and I'll put the link on Maritime Paranormal Chat PDI Facebook group page as well. But apparently, there have been more than 10,000 eyewitness accounts of Bigfoot just in the continental U.S. in the last 50 years. And in these accounts, and pretty much any account that you hear of, unless you're seeing a juvenile-sized or baby Sasquatch, the average size is usually anywhere between 7 to 10 feet and covered in hair.
See, so are you seeing my point that I'm talking about? Are you kind of going in the same direction that I'm in for the Maritimes and the Atlantic provinces?
Well, see, I'm going to say something in a couple of minutes that's really going to open up a real big can of worms, I think, in this conversation, because I totally understand where you're coming from with that, and I get that, and I agree to a point, because if he's usually 8 to 10 feet, let's assume that these stories and reports are true and accurate, and he really is 8 to 10 feet. How are you not able to get any video or photographic evidence? Like, how is that possible?
That's what I was saying earlier, especially over here in the Atlantic provinces and the Maritime provinces. You can't hide something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. But now consider.
So basically, what I'm saying is the sightings in the Maritime and the Atlantic provinces are full of shit.
Well, no, not necessarily.
No, I think they are for here. I'm not saying that he doesn't exist, because I believe he does. But I think that here in the Atlantic provinces, people are jumping on the bandwagon. I don't think he could survive over here. There's not enough woodland. There's not enough. There's too many people around. There's too much congestion of people. Like, I can't see it happening.
Northern and central New Brunswick is, it's
well, it's very dense.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's it called? The Renews Highway or whatever it is.
Yeah.
There,
But if you look at those links and you look at the sightings for the Atlantic provinces, they're not in these areas.
Okay. Now look at it this way, and I'm not saying that they're accurate or true or anything like that, but consider this. Now let's look on a bigger picture here. Let's suppose that people really are seeing Bigfoot or Sasquatch, whatever you want to call them, okay? So let's assume that they're real. How are we not seeing them? Okay, now, I'm just going to say something here before we get into the local sightings. I'm going to tell you about something that I saw not too long ago. There's a show out called Terror in the Woods. In this series, it's a lot of content on Bigfoot and stuff, mostly in the U.S., There's one episode, season 1, episode 6. It's called, I believe it was Creature in the Woods. And it's basically taking place, and I don't know how true this is, but it basically takes place approximately 1 hour outside of Moncton. And what happens is this girl grew up going to this cabin that was built by her grandfather long before she was ever born, but she was going there all her life to this cabin in the summers. And when she got married, she started taking her kids there. And so her husband and her kids go to this cabin one particular summer, and they start hearing this creature in the woods close to them. And the husband, and again, I don't know how true this is, but the husband says that at times this creature sounded so close to him that he should have been able to see what was making the noise. He said there's times where he should have been able to see it 20 feet in front of him. He should have been able to see something. And he said there's times he felt like he could have reached out and touched it. That's how close it was. But he couldn't see anything. So let's look outside the box and consider, and I'm not saying that this is true or accurate, this is just my own opinion, but what if these creatures are real and they're using some sort of cloaking device, or they can make themselves completely invisible?
I don't know about the invisible part, but after doing research and watching Skinwalker Ranch, some of the sightings that they have had there where they've seen a 7-foot-tall, hairy being come out of a portal.
Well, see,
and that would that could explain why they track these creatures, and then they track them so far, and then footprints disappear.
Exactly.
Everything disappears.
Exactly.
There's no bodies. There's no bodies from one dying. There's no fecal matter. There's nothing. Because you know what? They come, they do what they're going to do, and then they're going to go, they take a shit somewhere else.
Yeah.
But going back to 1 hour at a Moncton, like it's just, I don't know. I don't know if I could, I don't know. What's their what could they possibly, there's nothing up here. We don't even have a good climate for them.
But other than more dense woods in the Pacific Northwest and more isolation, like, what else could they want? Like, I mean, there's abundance of food for them if they're feeding off wildlife and whatnot. I'm not saying, again, like that I believe all the incidents are true.
Yeah.
But we don't know what it is that keeps them alive if they're real. We don't know what it is they're looking for. We don't know what it is that makes them feel safe. We don't know what their motivations are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Yeah. Like, why are they here? Like, if they are here, why? What is their purpose?
Exactly.
How do they come? How do they go?
Exactly. And I mean, you can look at so many different theories as to why we can't find them, because, you know, you got the portal theory, you got the cloaking theory. Are they alien? Who knows?
Are there records of the indigenous cultures in the Maritime and Atlantic provinces? Is there records of them seeing our indigenous cultures seeing these? Everything else is so obvious, and everything else is so like, you know, because it's been around for so long. But I've never heard of any kind of indigenous culture in our neck of the woods that have even have anything close to that. I work up west, and I'm close to a reservation.
Right, Lennox Island, yeah.
Lennox Island, and you never hear of anything like this. Like, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people, but no, there's nothing. I've never ever heard of anything in their history or back in their culture or myths or something.
But even today,
I don't know.
Even today, I haven't heard, like, just researching for this episode, I haven't never heard of any reports of anything seen on PEI.
No. And once again, we don't even have forests over here.
Exactly. And that's probably why. But you take New Brunswick, I mean, you can walk 5 minutes into the woods and get lost.
Yeah, but when that goes back to too, like, how far back does the first sighting in New Brunswick go back?
The earliest, I think it goes back to, was 1984. I think it was, or 84.
That's what I was just going to say. 1983, 84.
Right.
Nothing before that we've had that you can find.
Right.
And what happened back in 84? It was the big trend on Bigfoot.
It could very well.
It was the big trend. Everybody was talking about it, and then all of a sudden, boom, we got them up here in our neck of the woods. It's like the big clown sightings. Remember those, the killer clowns?
I think that was determined to be promoting the movie It, because that was just before the new It movie came in.
No, but people saw them all of a sudden. Like, they started popping up, and they were big over in Britain,
right?
And then they started coming into and then people started seeing them in the U.S. But do you know what I mean, though? Like it seems like when something comes up, all of a sudden we start.
Yes,
I don't know. I just find it hard pressed for any validation of the Maritimes and the Atlantic provinces for this. I don't know. I can't see it. I really can't. I think it's just a wave that people are trying to ride, and they're trying to become, trying to be a little bit famous or trying to get a name for themselves, especially now with social media going on so big, and everybody wants to get their name out there.
Right.
But, and really, when you think of it, everybody has a cell phone now.
Everybody. Like,
15, 20 years ago, not everybody had a camera on them or a cell phone on them.
Yep. But
now,
they do.
Everybody does. And, I mean, if someone's out walking in the wilderness, going out for a hike or something, they always have their cell phone with them. So, I mean...
There's just too many reports of not being... Oh, I didn't take my camera out. Too many reports of that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, people take their phone to take a
Yeah.
Like, I mean, come on. All you got to do is hit an app, boom, you're right at your camera.
But one thing you do have to remember, too, or consider is that these sightings that people have seen, Bigfoot or Sasquatch, is basically glimpses. It's something in the bush that just happened to, jump in the clearing, and you only have a matter of
seconds, literally.
seconds. Yeah, and by the time you get your phone out and get the actual camera up and running,
I get that. I get that 100%.
Yeah.
There's so many cases now where that's just such a convenient excuse.
Yeah.
But it's something else you need to consider too is if these things are authentic, if they're actually a thing, we have to consider the deforestation of all these areas as well, because I mean the line of where they're cutting trees is going further and further into the forest every year.
Yeah.
And
okay. I'm just gonna pop something out here. Now, I don't know much about the U.S., but I do know that Canada, and they've been doing it for a long time now. Canada, when they are cutting trees for whatever reason, whether it's for homes or lumber or paper, whatever, they're planting just as much as they're cutting. So we're replacing what we had. So we're not getting to that point, I don't think, where we're losing. Okay, now we got barely nothing left. Do you know what I mean? That's happening in the States. It's happening in all the like a lot of those countries down south. It's like the Amazon is disappearing. Things like that. The rainforests are disappearing. But I mean, in Canada, the one thing that Canada is quite good at is replacing these trees. It just takes a while to grow back.
I think basically the formula of it is, I think for every tree that's cut down, they're planting 5. I believe it's something to that.
Yeah, it's a huge amount.
Yeah,
right.
But still, I mean, you got to remember these trees that are getting chopped down also have been there for 100 years compared to the little saplings that they're replanting. So, I mean, you go back to where you planted those trees, they're still only going to be maybe 4 or 5 feet tall. You know, that's not good for Bigfoot that's 8 feet tall to hide in. You know,
okay, I agree, but we've been doing this for years. Like we're talking 30, 40 years. We've been planting trees.
Yeah.
So there's in some areas, like these trees are big now and they're growing. But anyway, I think we may be getting off topic too. But yeah.
But if we're displacing species, then that could be just enough to push them out into our field of vision.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you see it with deer and other animals, especially not cutting down trees, but when you see they're having down the States and out west there with the massive fires, you know, it's pushing them out into the open. It's pushing them out into like subdivisions and so forth and so on, you know, because their habitat or whatever has been destroyed or, you know, burnt out or whatever. So, you know.
I'll buy that. I'll buy that.
I mean, that's assuming that they're actually real, which we don't know.
That's what I mean. That person, that woman, and that man who had the cabin, and they said they heard that thing and he couldn't see it.
Yeah,
and it made a sound. He didn't know what it was. Like, I mean, that could have just been a coyote caught in a bear trap.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? When an animal gets caught in a trap or it's cornered or something like that, it does make some pretty wild sounds.
There was also reports of it banging on an empty drum, the way Bigfoot is known to do. So, but I mean, again, we weren't there, and I mean, there wasn't anything like no video, audio documentation or anything like that. So really, all we're doing with these things is taking people's word for it.
Yeah.
And that's
anybody
the unfortunate part. Yeah, exactly. And
anybody can do it, you know.
Yeah, so all we can do really is do what we're doing now, just talk about it and speculate on what makes the most logical sense is what could have really happened.
Like one of the most known things for Bigfoot to do is it's called tree knocking.
Yeah,
and,
exactly. And that's what they said this thing was doing.
Yeah, so I mean, but when you think of it, anybody could go out in the middle of the woods and start knocking on it, and then all of a sudden people are saying, "No, there's a Bigfoot out."
Yeah, and you have to take in the fear factor as well, because I mean, I know that we went to Quispamsis And it's a very rural area. And they took us, her family took us camping to this old abandoned campground that was probably about an hour away. And I mean, it just felt like we were driving forever into nothing. And when we actually got to the campground, we drove 2 miles down this dirt road, which took us 20 minutes, heavily wooded. I don't know how many deer we saw. But make a long story short, we finally got to this campsite, which was on a lake, and it was the most secluded, desolate, for me, depressing, because there was absolutely nothing there. But what I kept thinking of was, my God, what if there's a bear? Or what if there's a UFO coming down over the lake in the middle of the night, because we're in this little log cabin with no lock on the door? And there's no outside lines, cell phones didn't work. But I had to take a at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and the only place to do it was an outhouse 20 or 30 feet away from the house. I wasn't going out.
I'll tell you, if I had to go take a piss in an outhouse 30 feet away from a cabin in the middle of nowhere, I'll be pissing and shitting in the sink.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my point
I ain't going out there in the middle of the night, forget it.
Yeah, so my point is that when I went out there, I stood on the deck and contemplated, okay, how bad do I need to use that bathroom? Because at this point, I wasn't into the paranormal to the degree that I am now, but I mean, every movie I've ever seen or documentary about UFOs, about Bigfoot, was going through my head.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if
or Friday the 13th.
Yeah. And
some guy out there with a hockey mask.
Exactly. And I'm sure if I would have heard anything, then I would have been on high alert for the rest of that weekend we were there.
But see, that's where that goes back to what your mind's racing, right? Your mind sees things and a lot of these sightings that people see for a split second. You take some of these grizzly bears and these black bears, and they've been known to stand on their own 2 feet, and they stand up, even if it's just for a couple of seconds, and then they get down. And you just catch a glimpse of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And
all of a sudden, hey, there, I saw Bigfoot.
Yeah, the moral of the story is that your mind plays tricks on you when you're scared, and it over-dramatizes and exaggerates things.
And exactly, and with Bigfoot being so popular, it's an easy grab to think, depending on where you are. I wouldn't be downtown Charlottetown, just on the outskirts of Charlottetown, and see something in the corner of my eye and assume it's a Bigfoot, because I wouldn't do that, because I'm not, you just wouldn't.
Yeah.
But if you're out in BC or down in, even on the East Coast is kind of iffy. The whole East Coast, and I mean Canada, U.S., you don't see much of it. You don't hear much. Mostly it's all, like you said, the Pacific Northwest. But that's why I'm so skeptical about these sightings in pretty much our backyard. Are these people is that what's in their mind and that's what they see? Are they baked? What is it?
I think it's probably a combination of everything that we've talked about so far. Mistaken identity, people wanting their 15 minutes of fame.
Yep, it's exactly what it is.
The fear factor's taken over, and maybe it's genuine. Who knows? What do you think, Flatty?
Well, the way I look at it, man, it is possible. It sounds strange, but look.
Oh, and I agree. I agree too that anything's possible.
Look at all these species of animals that they've that they're starting to find that they thought were either extinct or even new species, even new stuff. Exactly. So I personally, show me something that to prove to me that there isn't, then I'll stop believing in them.
And that's exactly how I feel. But I just
you know what the sad
thing is? For up here, I just can't see it.
You know what the sad part of it all is, though? You can prove something exists, but it's impossible to prove something doesn't exist, because there's always that possibility that some evidence at some point will be found. So,
and I'm going to be blunt here. I don't think you're ever going to find evidence, because I think that these things are not of this earth. They're very smart, and that's how, like, they come, they go. People have seen them for a split second, they're gone. That's what I think. It's something that's totally beyond our capacity to even comprehend. So I don't think we will ever actually, not in my lifetime, and I don't think in any near lifetime. That's my opinion. But you got these people who are saying, "Oh, I was kidnapped by a family of them."
Oh, Albert Osman.
Like, come on.
1920s.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting story too. Now, I have a hard time with his account of things that transpired in that experience.
Yeah, like, I mean, why would, like, if you've got these creatures, these upright, up to 10 feet tall creatures, and they like to be by themselves, because obviously, if they wanted to be caught or wanted to be seen, they you know, they're not like deer or moose where they just sit there and eat. You know what I mean? Like, they obviously don't like to be around people, and then all of a sudden, a family of them and kidnap somebody. Like, come on, why would they even, like, that makes zero sense.
No, I totally agree.
But I mean, and if they did, let's just say a family or a group did take somebody, I would say it would be for food purposes. They're not going to let them go, and they wouldn't keep it for days. Like, I mean, you don't play with your food.
But how many times have you ever heard of somebody actually being kidnapped by a Sasquatch or a family of them?
That's what I'm getting at. You've heard the few. That's right. You've heard the few odd stories, and they're very odd. And yeah.
So, well, anyone that has ever been kidnapped by a Sasquatch, they're still on the missing persons list, because there's no way in hell that they would come out of it alive. You know what I mean? Like, there has been people that have gone into the woods and never came out. You know, were they just lost and then died out there, or did? And there's
sometimes, you know, have you heard the story about the two groups of girls that went out at different times, down one in Peru and somewhere else, and they found their camera, and weird pictures are on the camera.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they just disappeared. Bodies never found.
Did you ever? You must have heard about the Yeti in where was it, Russia or something like that?
Every continent has their own version of Bigfoot.
But you heard about that? They found the camera, and they actually had pictures, and their eyes were torn out, their tongues were.
Oh, you talking about Dyatlov Pass?
It was over in Russia or Siberia or something like that.
That was 1957, I think it was.
Yeah, and they found the cameras, and they actually have a picture of a Yeti.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that they killed?
No. They were out camping. It was in the wintertime.
Right.
A lot of snow and stuff like that. And how many was there of them? 7 of them?
I think they're all killed. Every one of them died. Horrible death.
Every one of them were killed by some kind of a wild animal. I mean, in bad shape. And like I said, their tongues were ripped right out. Eyes were ripped out. You know, they were in bad shape. But they found the camera, and they have an actual photo of what they presume was a Yeti.
Yeah, and for anybody listening, and I don't know if you guys have heard this or not, but on Tubi, there's actually a documentary called An Unknown Compelling Force, where this guy, he was a researcher, he actually went to the Ural Mountains a couple of years ago where this happened. And I don't know how true it is with his conclusions, how true they are, but he has very good theories as to why and how the bodies came to be found the way they were. And I'm not saying I buy the whole thing or any of it, because I really don't know. I'm up in the air. I'll actually play the audio trailer for it here when we go to break. Having said that, I think we should look at some local stories, and we'll do that when Maritime Paranormal Chat continues. Don't forget to check out An Unknown Compelling Force, based on the best-selling book of the same name. This documentary delves into what has become known as Russia's greatest unsolved mystery, the Dyatlov Pass incident. In February of 1959, 9 young hikers went on a cross-country ski trip and died under mysterious and horrific circumstances. Ultimately, the hikers' bodies were found with crushed bones, in one case missing eyes, and even a missing tongue. And for the most part, they were stripped of most of their clothes, which were later found and were radioactive. All this happened in temperatures as cold as minus 50 degrees. This 2021 documentary examines the most up-to-date evidence and provides unexplored credible theories and possible answers to what could have actually happened on that tragic night of horror. So far, the only place I've seen this streaming for free is on www.watchsomuch.com, or you can purchase it on iTunes for $9.99. The following is the audio trailer, and you can actually watch it with video on YouTube.
When you look at the wounds that were on the hikers, I'm just not buying the accidental thing.
Why? How come? Why would they die? I think all these theories are pretty weird.
In 1959, 9 Russian students were found frozen to death in the Ural Mountains in an event now known as the Dyatlov Pass incident. Found a mile from their tent without their winter clothes or boots, each one suffering inexplicable injuries. Despite the clues and evidence of violence, the official cause of death was stated as hypothermia. This only fueled conspiracy theories from alien visitors to Russian Yetis. Just what were the hikers fleeing from?
Maybe our government.
Every diary entry in every photo seems to hide a clue.
There were rumors that they just killed each other.
I don't believe that in any way could this be an accident.
With so many conflicting stories, I've come to Russia to ask the question, what is the true story of the Dyatlov Pass?
We're back with Maritime Paranormal Chat, where we discuss the paranormal, the unexplained, the creepy, and the just plain weird. I'm Raven, and today we're joined by Igor and Flatty discussing alleged Bigfoot sightings in the Maritimes. And we have a major skeptic with us tonight in Igor. So, yeah. As far as you were asking earlier about Aboriginal beliefs as far as Bigfoot goes in the Maritimes earlier. And yeah. I really don't have any answer for that because I don't have any idea where to even look for that or to find out that information without sounding like a complete moron. There's got to be a really discreet, cautionary way to ask that.
Yeah, it's not something that you could just come right out and ask.
Well, it'd be something that actually you would never call or you never do. You would have to have a friend from that. Let's say, what I'm saying is, you would pretty much have to be a friend. You wouldn't call up like the chief or the council or anything like that. Say, listen, I want to know if you guys heard any stories about Bigfoot because you know what, they'd laugh you off the phone, probably.
Well, they'd hang up.
I don't even think they'd even laugh you off the phone. I think they just hang up on you.
They probably just hang up thinking you're being sarcastic or something. You know, it's just one of those things. It's a touchy story. I mean, they probably block your number because they think you're just like joking around. Because there is actually people that do want to know, and then there's the ones that crank call and.
But I just find it funny in the majority of the tribes in the Pacific Northwest, or even in the central U.S. and central North America. But mostly the Pacific Northwest. The majority of the tribes all have history with this Bigfoot, this Sasquatch, this Yeti, whatever it is, whatever you want to refer to it as. They all have this history. They've all got stories. But I just find it funny that nothing on the whole East Coast, you just don't hear anything. There's nothing.
Right, and I mean, let's assume that the stories we're about to examine are true. And you were saying, Igor, earlier that you've never heard of any of these things. There's never been any reports of any of these things in the Maritimes up until 1983. So let's just say,
and even then from 1983 till now, there's only maybe 10 or 12 sightings
that we know,
if that we know of. Yes,
and I'm sure if there was anything of any significance that's even remotely credible, we would have heard about it, which is... Yeah. So anyway, let's just assume that the sightings are accurate, they're real, they're true. If Bigfoot, if that's what it is, if he's actually making an appearance here, could it be... And I mean, I think this would be the only logical explanation. It would depend on what he actually is in order to make an appearance. What I mean by that is if he's alien, which we'll get into a little bit more later on, who's to say that that could be their new testing ground? Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It kind of does, but if I wanted to stay discreet, and if I, like, let's just say they're very smart. Okay, obviously they had some level of intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. We like, even from the stories that we've heard and how they can hide. Yes, and how they can hide, how they can speak, how they can communicate by howls or tree drumming, whatever. They're intelligent. Like, why would they appear in an area that is so densely populated and risk being seen? It doesn't make any sense. It makes zero sense.
Well, I mean, Igor, you have to look at it this way. Like, and I understand exactly what you're saying. Is how come there's so many sightings on the West Coast, where it's so mountainous and there's so much terrain, there's so much forest? You would think if there was one in, let's say, New Brunswick, there would be a lot more sightings than what would be out west. You know what I mean? Because
exactly, and that wouldn't be to their benefit. Like, if they're that intelligent, why would they go in an area where they know where they're going to be seen 100 times more than everywhere else if they're trying to be discreet? It makes zero sense.
Well, it's not about why they would be here, because maybe they don't have that intelligence to know. Maybe they're just wandering. Maybe they're just wandering and they're following the trees. I mean, you get a couple of 100 feet into the woods, you know what I mean? It's 100 feet in the woods out west is 100 feet in the woods in New Brunswick. You know what I mean? Now, when they get out in the wide open, they'll find another place, but it's just not as big. But what I'm saying is, how did they get here? Why are they coming this far east, you know? And also, if they did, if they are in New Brunswick, the way I look at it is they would be seen a lot more. There would be a lot, I shouldn't say, there would be a lot more reports of people seeing them.
You would think.
Crossing the road or digging in the garbage, or you know what I mean, looking for food.
And the stories like when I researched those stories from the Maritimes, they're all almost identical. Oh, he was crossing the road.
Yeah,
he was going down into a ditch.
Well, I mean that's the way it is, though. I mean, because most people see them.
That's what they're doing
from vehicles. I mean, you're going to, you're flying down the highway, you happen to see something on the side of the road. Like I said, it could have been a bear standing up. It could have been, you're flying down the road doing 100 clicks and the bear standing up in the woods, big black thing. Everybody's going to think,
that's what I would say.
Around 4 feet. That had to be a Bigfoot.
But
you know what I mean?
Of these people, once again, how many, if I was driving down the road in broad daylight, and I'll be honest with you, if I thought I saw a Bigfoot, I'd slow the car and I'd take a look.
Yeah.
And I grab my camera.
Even turn around.
I'm not saying I would get so close to him that the geezer would come after me. I'm not saying that, but you'd want to be able to say, well, like, I think it was a Bigfoot. Are you sure it wasn't a bear? Well, it could have been.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
But it's safe to say also, if you turned around, he'd probably be gone because you probably snuck up on him, like flying down the road. He's not going to come up, and a Bigfoot is not going to come up to the road on a busy highway. He's going to hear it hundreds of feet away, in the woods before he actually gets to the side of the, you know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean.
Bears are kind of dumb and stupid.
When you hear a lot of these sightings, these encounters, it's very, very seldom where people get that close to a Bigfoot.
a lot of the times it's when us as humans, we actually not sneak up on them, but we
stumble upon them.
Stumble upon him, exactly. And he's either you catch him off guard, and that's what I mean. A lot of times, if you catch this Bigfoot off guard and he sees you, he's going to bolt before you even have a chance to get a camera out.
Well, not only that, but by the time you shit your pants and realize what's going on, if these stories are true, I mean, and you see this big, hairy, 8 to 10 foot tall creature 5 to 10 feet away, chances are you're not going to be able to pull out your phone and start snapping pictures or video.
And believe it or not, these, even if they are that much bigger than us by 3 feet and 500 pounds bigger, I mean, they're probably more scared of us than we are them. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, they probably, because we see humans all the time. When we see a Bigfoot or a bear or something like that, it's kind of like we know they're out there type of thing. But these guys don't read the tabloids and say, hey, there's humans out there, or know that there's humans out there. You know, it could be the first time a Bigfoot ever stumbled across a human and just goes, what the fuck?
Yeah, well, exactly.
What the? And he goes back to his wife and kids and says, you're not going to believe what I just seen. I seen a guy with a ball cap. I seen something that was walking upright, smaller than us,
Yeah, I seen another one of those. Same thing. I seen another one of those cloth-covered creatures today.
Yeah, it could be an alien, It could be vice versa going on. Like, you're not going to believe what I just seen. I'm not telling the neighbors. They're going to freak out, man. They're going to think I'm nuts. Now, it could be the same way.
Now, having said that, another possibility that the reason, if these sightings are accurate, if they're true, is, let's say they're interdimensional beings, which, in my opinion, is the most logical explanation. And who's to say that a portal may have opened up in New Brunswick somewhere in the deep woods? And maybe it closed again. And that's why we're not seeing more than we are. How do you guys feel about that?
I don't know. I don't believe in that. I think it's an actual living being. That's my own opinion.
I think it's an actual living being too, but an actual living being, we don't know what kind of technology that whatever these aliens are that can transport them through these portals.
Yeah.
Like they can be an actual living being. And maybe they're not a living being, but...
And that's another thing. I don't think it's something from outer space. That's my own opinion. I mean, you guys can all judge that. But as far as I'm concerned, I think it's just something that through the evolution and everything, I think it's just more or less is something that just hung around for years. And we just, I mean, look at cavemen. Look at, shit like that.
The reason why I suggested aliens, and I'm not saying that I believe that, but I mean it's a possibility, and the reason why I say that is because there's a lot of places like Mount Shasta in the U.S., the mountains in B.C., certain areas, and if you ever watch a show, I think I mentioned it before, about Paranormal Rangers on Unsolved Mysteries, a new series on Netflix. They talk about, I believe it's Arizona, the it's called Navajo Nation's Reservation in Arizona. And there's a lot of mountains there, and there's a lot of sightings of Bigfoot, and they correlate with strange lights in the sky. That's why.
And I've seen that too with different documentaries. There's little orbs flying around and things like that when they're seen. And then after the orbs disappear, everything disappears. There's no more Bigfoot. They can't find it. Where'd it go?
Yeah, see, like that's the weird thing is that there's so many possibilities, and we really don't know. And then you look at Skinwalker Ranch, where people have swore that they seen these Bigfoot type creatures. They see a portal opening up, and these creatures crawling through and running into the woods.
And that area is a hotbed of activity.
Oh, they've got everything over there.
It's a hotbed of paranormal activity.
And anybody who's never seen Hunt for the Skinwalker, it's free on Tubi. I urge you to do so. It starts a little slow, but that is as creepy as you can get. You ever see that, Flatty?